This video is brought to you by Law Excellence IAS Academy.
Dear students, good morning. Let us start the discussion on today's newspaper, 24th April 2019. The first article, The Permanence of Arab Uprisings. What is the author is trying to say that the Arab Spring, which started in 2010, is it becoming a permanent phenomenon or is it spreading further? In this context, he states that as protests hit Sudan and Algeria, it's anybody's guess if they will go the Tunisia or the Egypt way. It means we need to know the outcomes of the Arab Spring in Tunisia, outcomes of the Arab Spring in Egypt, and then we have to guess the existing circumstance in Sudan and Algeria will go in which direction. Either it is Tunisia's direction or Egypt direction. He has organized his essay this way. The first he was talking about Arab Spring 2. It means what are the developments in Algeria and Sudan, and then regime changes, and after that counter revolutionaries. Now see here, there is a dictator and a regime, an elite body that was created by this dictator and to keep the control of the affairs of the state. This dictator is being overthrown, but however this regime is continuing in other form. It means to the revolution which aims at the change, there are counter revolutionaries in the form of military, in the form of militia, in the form of monarchy to counter these revolutionaries. So that's why the dictator may be gone, but the regime did not change its colors. So in Tunisia the situation is different. Mr. Ben Ali has gone from the power, and today we have stable multi-party democracy in Tunisia. It is not the case with Egypt, Libya, or certain other countries. So in this context, Sudan and Algeria, which way they will go, it's anybody's guess. Here the author is trying to say that Sudan and Algeria are also going in the direction of having a military rule. It means the ruler may change, but the regime and the structure created by the regime is not expected to change. That is what the author is trying to say. But why the Arab Spring? The revolutions in the Arab world started back then in 2010. There was high unemployment. The entire means of production were there in the hands of the rulers or his proxies. There is abundant corruption. Basic livelihoods are threatened. So in this context, I remember still the event. In Tunisia, a fruit vendor was beaten by the police and finally he burnt him alive. That's where the revolution started in Tunisia. Finally, it replaced Ben Ali. And similarly in Egypt, I think that is Tahrir Square, where the revolutionaries got gathered and they are able to throw the Mubarak government. So high inflation and the livelihood challenges pushed the young people towards the revolution. In this case, in Tunisia, there is a strong civil society. Existence of this strong civil society made it to move towards a stable constitutional democracy. On the other hand, in Egypt, the power the power transferred to military. And then, if you see Jordan, the monarchy is still strong. If you talk about Syria, Assad regime is still strong. So these are all countering the revolutionaries. So the counter-revolutionary structures are strong in the form of various regimes in the Arab world. So in the meanwhile, the aspirations of the democracy or aspirations of the young people for democracy are being scuttled by these counter-revolutionaries. Now let us see the story of Sudan and Algeria. Sudan, it was broken into Southern Sudan and Sudan. The South Sudan has 3/4 of the oil reserve of the Sudan, and then once it formed into a new country, the reserves or the wealth which is available to Sudan has decreased. and it has made the livelihood very difficult, opportunities decreased. Omar al-Bashir, who was ruling with his militia and military, today was thrown out of the power in Sudan. And in the case of the Algeria, I think it is Abdel Aziz Bouteflika, he was the president for almost 30 years and he has created an elitist military structure surrounding him to govern. Now, close to the age of 80 years, he still wants to continue as president. And the people wants to have a change after 30 years. So in these both cases, the leaders were replaced by the military leadership. So it means the leader or the ruler is changing, but the regime is not changing. Ultimately, the color may change, but ultimately life will continue in the same form. That's what author is trying to express it to us. The problem with cherry picking data, if what is the author is trying to say here? If it's the government case that NSSO figures are suspect, what has it based policy decisions on? Now, data driven decision making, what does that mean? You need to know what is happening on the ground, and this data you need to convert into knowledge. This knowledge shall become the decision for the people at the policy level. Now, NSSO, National Sample Survey Organization, conducts this, and this data will drive the decision making. This is in practice from the days of Mehel Nobis. Now today, the government started suspecting the NSSO data. NSSO is nothing but government agency itself. If the government is not clear or not happy with NSSO surveys, it can redesign them. It can appoint a committee and that committee can take up the things. The second thing, if NSSO data is not being valid, then on what basis government is making the decisions all these days? You know that MG Narega allocations were increased and Pradhana Mantri Kisan, where 6,000 rupees money is being given to the farmers. And all these are MG Narega. This clearly shows that there is an agrarian distress in the country, and also the employment has decreased tremendously to the people. The same thing NSSO has made. The same thing NSSO said to us. Today between growth, the correlation between growth, employment generation, poverty reduction, farmer suicides is missing. So if the growth is high, industrial production has to be high, job creation has to be high, wealth generation has to be high. It means poverty has to be reduced. But we are not seeing such a correlation. It means the growth figures which are being stated, around 7% of the growth. So there is some statistical or calculation error in that. What can be? Normally, we take the organized sector growth and we correlate that with the unorganized sector growth. So it means initially we do not take the unorganized sector growth. After demonetization and GST, the unorganized sector was worst hit. So the correlation between organized and unorganized sector is missing. Because of this missing correlation, we are wrongly elevating our growth data. So if we can really measure the unorganized sector, independent of the organized sector, the 7% surrounding growth will not be absolute, will not be a proper figure. That is the author is saying. Now, what was the difference between the previous regimes and the present regime? The previous regimes also tried to hide their numbers, elevate their numbers of growth, etc. So, let's take wholesale price index is dismissed, saying that it do not give the services sector data. Or they try to say or hide certain wrong details of the government, project the positive details. But for the first time, the government is rejecting its own agency's data. So this is a threat to data-driven decision making and selectively taking certain, that is cherry picking certain aspects of data which can put the government in positive light. It is not good for the economy and the country in the long run. India's perilous obsession with Pakistan. So let us see this way. Pakistan is a country which is created on the basis of religion. We know that. And Pakistan is a small country And obviously, it will have this fear of a small nation. So it means the Pakistan talking about India is quite normal. India is almost 8 times bigger than Pakistan economy, and it has a much bigger global stature compared to Pakistan. So Pakistan having an insecurity about India is understandable. But India creating its own insecurity and driving the hyper-nationalism surrounding Pakistan, is it understandable? Probably no. So India, what the author saying here, the hyper-nationalistic frenzy to defeat Pakistan comes with huge human and material costs. So according to author, so this India showing the Pakistan as an enemy and building the defense structures, mobilizing the armies is creating huge human and material costs. What are the human costs? The terrorists, they are able to make advantage of this situation to increase the tensions between these two countries. It is further and further leading to military escalation. And the second, if you see Glacier Siachen, where India is spending close to 6 crores of rupees per day to maintain the troops. It is called the highest battlefield in the world. So what about the human cost which is causing because of the nature over there? And cross-border fire, violation of the ceasefire agreement, which is leading to again huge human costs. And coming to the material costs, you know that India is the second largest importer of the arms. It has the fifth largest army in the world. So a poor country such as India, can it afford such a big army? And then if India has to compete, which country is best for it to compete? It can be China. So it's not in the terms of military. China in 1980s, at the time of independence, if you see, India's economy and per capita income are bigger than China. In 1980s, they are almost equal. Today, Chinese economy is 5 times bigger than India's economy. And the poverty, education, and healthcare is much better in China compared to India. So that is where India can see a right competitor, that is with regard to livelihoods and development. So our obsession and hyper-nationalistic zingoism with Pakistan has to end. We have to focus today on development of our people. This particular targeting of Pakistan or bringing Pakistan central to our thinking is deviating our objectives and goals. We have a bigger war to fight against poverty. That is what is the essence of this article. Now, a natural next step. Here, India-Australia's relations are going further and further. No, Australia is the next destination after USA for education of Indians. And there are more and more Indians finding Australia as a destination to settle. People to people contact is growing in Australia. Now, military relations are also growing. This is the largest naval exercise Australia ever participated outside the country. So it means the Indo-Pacific cooperation between these two countries is increasing. So more than that, there is no much in this article. Remember, this AS India Index is a naval exercise between these two countries. In an oil slick, what is the author is trying to say here? India is testing its traditional ties with Iran by giving in to US bullying. You know, India was given an exemption to import oil 6 months back. Now, US wants to take away all these exemptions. And in this case, Prime Minister Modi has assured Mr. Rouhani that India will continue to import the oil from Iran. And the second thing, Ms. Sushma Swaraj, External Affairs Minister, also assured that India will not follow the unilateral sanctions of any country. It will only follow the UN sanctions. Now, whatever the sanctions United States is talking about, these are not United Nations sanctions. And the second thing is, India have many strategic interests. That is, it is developing Chabahar port. As of now, Chabahar port and its development is not coming under the sanctions of United States of America. And the next, immediately when our oil imports decrease from Iran, it is expected to have a spike in oil prices. Increase in oil prices will have a multiplier effect on Indian economy, and the cost of each and every good is expected to increase. That is very much worrisome for India. And see here, Obama came into nuclear deal with Iran, and then President Trump wants to do away with this nuclear deal, and he already did it away. Then what is the consistency of policy in United States of America? Is USA trustworthy? This is the first question which will be posed by the global world. And the next, the Iran nuclear deal is not just with United States of America. It is with P5 plus Germany plus European Union. So in this context, what these other countries are doing is the question. So if Trump is bullying, why can't in these 6 months these countries other than United States of America could have come to a particular alternative where Mr. Trump's this bullying or Trump's agenda could have been put on hold? So a counter narrative and an alternative to come out of this situation, why it was not developed? That is what is a big question. So again, there are extremist Islamic factions in Iran. Now they were always opposing this Iran nuclear deal, saying that America cannot be trusted. But however, the Mr. President Rouhani's team, which is more a moderate Islamist team, it went ahead. Now, what will be the value of the President Rouhani in Iran politics because of the happenings surrounding the country? So these are all the questions which still lay unanswered. The halfway mark. So now, in South India and in Gujarat, elections are over, and in North India, election is going on. And now, religious divide is playing a significant impact in North India, and BJP and these parties are expected to play Hindutva card. Now, it is the time Election Commission is expected to be more watchful. So, these are the articles for today. And finally, thank you. Have a good day. All the best.